So this is our first homework sheet on distance time graphs. This is the first homework sheet because if you look at all the distance time graphs, there are no numbers on the scales, which makes it a little easier to work with because we're basically breaking it down to little steps. We want to first talk about the story without using the numbers from the rate of change. So just keeping it very simple, just using words like fast, slow, and moderate. And then we want to introduce the numbers and the calculations of the rate of change. So this sheet is hopefully not that bad. Okay, so the first question is basically they give us a story and they ask us the first graph or the second graph match better with the story. So if you read the story, she's fast in the beginning and then she stops and then she slows down. So because it's fast, stop, slow, then the first graph A, matches the story better because it's steep, horizontal, and then flat, or not flat, not as steep, a little flatter than the first line segment. But the key idea is that the first segment is much steeper in the first graph than the second graph. So the first graph mimics the story of fast, stop, slow, whereas the second graph is slow, stop, fast. So for question 2, they gave us a graph and they asked us to describe the situation. Now, as you can tell, I didn't have any numbers, so I couldn't talk about rate of change, and I didn't even tell you how long the person was walking for. I just used very generic words like moving quickly, moving slowly, standing still, or stopping. So just very generic words, but we're just getting the hang of reading distance time graphs. One of the key things you always want to write is away or towards your reference point, whatever it may be. And you also want to add the fact that you're going at a constant rate. Your rate of change, regardless of what it is not changing. You're moving at a constant rate. You're not speeding up, slowing down. Okay, that's a very important idea here. That's going to carry on to the next unit. In fact, it's a constant rate. Okay, so hopefully you can read over what I wrote for question 2. But yeah, I just looked at the rate of change and I asked myself, is this line segment steep or is it a little flat? And what direction is it going in? So is the rate of change positive or is the rate of change negative? Because if it's positive, you're moving away from the reference point. If it's negative, you're moving toward the reference point. For number 3, it's basically question 2, but there are more segments to the graph. So for question 3a, walk at a moderate constant rate away from reference point, slows down to a slow constant rate away from reference point, and then speed up at a fast constant rate. Okay, and all I can gather this to represent the motion, because if I look at the graph, I'm just looking at how steep the line segments are. I'm comparing the steepnesses. So that's how I know when to use the word fast, when to use the word slow, and when to use the word moderate. Okay, so basically the steepest one is fast. The one that's in between the middle, in between the super steep and the flatter one will be moderate, and the flattest line segment will be the slow speed. So yeah, I basically did the same thing for 3B as well, 3C, and 3D. I didn't put the answer for number 4 because I looked at the answer and that's exactly the graph I would have had. But my wording was a little different than the answers, so I prefer when you add these words here, like constant rate, reference point. You can add some of the wording in terms of the time it took for the trip, but you know what, we're going to do that in the next homework sheet when we have the numbers. But you can say, for example, walk at a slow constant rate away from reference point for a short period of time or for a long period of time by looking at the graph. But you know what I wrote here is more than sufficient. Okay, so hopefully you are ready for the next homework sheet on distance time graphs.